All right, so I think we're going to jump in here. So, everybody, welcome to Equanimity Amid Uncertainty. I am thrilled to have you here, and welcome to Jo Accardi. Amy, thank you for joining us.
So glad to be here.
Awesome. So, all right, we have about an hour, and today, everyone joining me is transformative breathwork guide, acupuncturist, and healer par excellence, Jo Accardi. And Amy, or I'm just gonna, it's okay, I refer to you as AJ, right?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Um, AJ is a dear friend whom I met. She reminded me in 2010 on a silent meditation retreat. And I think it was here in Colorado, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. In the Red Feather Lakes. We were at a beautiful retreat center. And uh, when I was thinking about people to invite to talk to who could bring a sense of calm, centered grounding to uh, this sort of ambient sense of crisis and global pandemic, AJ was someone who came to mind almost immediately. I called her up. I said, "What do you think about this idea?" And she was totally there for it. And I think for me, like it was the blend, AJ, that you bring of humor, compassion, style, and that with your sort of clinical acumen, which I mentioned in the email, that which you bring to your work. That's what I was looking for, and that's like what I think like triggered for me. I was like, this is perfect, and that and the real magic that I've experienced with AJ in her transformative breathwork guidance, and that is something we're going to go into today. And we're going to start with some questions. And AJ, what do you think? I'd like to just throw some questions out and maybe start broad, and then we can go into talking about the breath work, because I think it's something that people have heard about, or maybe people have tried. When they think about breath work, maybe they've tried pranayama, but this is really totally different. I had never experienced anything like this. Definitely for me fits in the category of inspiring a non-ordinary state of consciousness. It is really amazing, heart-opening, transformative work. And also for me, very neatly falls under the rubric of a kind of, it isn't meditation per se, but after breath work, I have experienced some of the most exquisite stillness and peace, and just uh, a sense of just like in the best sense, dissolution, just total contact with life. And, you know, sometimes that's where we go in meditation. So all of these things I'd love to chat with you about. And how's that sound to you?
Ready.
All right, good. All right. So to begin with, how, like, what do you, maybe we could just speak more broadly. I mean, you cross so many, as you said, you're a multi-hyphen healer. You work across different modalities. What are you hearing from people during this time, and how are you responding? How are you supporting people? What kind of advice are you giving? And I know that's different in different contexts and different situations, but yeah, how's it going, and what are
Good
you
and
doing?
fair question. I started acupuncture school in 2003, and as I was going through, our teachers started talking about the five elements, and they said, the heart is the emotion joy, but it can also be overjoy, and the liver is the emotion of anger, but it can also be beautiful vision. And they started walking through all the different organ systems and the relationship to emotions, and I was like, what is this? And as I started going through school, what we learned was that they always come together: the physical,
Hmm.
the experiential, all of, there's so many layers to everything that we're experiencing, good, bad, and indifferent, that where you choose to put your attention is what's going to change.
Hmm.
And when I was in school, I was like, please don't give me back pain. I want the most broken, twisted, people that, even the people that can't even verbalize what's going on, like they're my people. And I just realized that, in my own life, it had taken me a long time to differentiate emotion at all. It was just all one big emotion growing up. And that I realized how important it is to learn how to slow down and to recognize what's going on for you inside, and to learn to articulate that there's just so much healing in that. And what I see right now more than anything is massive amounts of fear, to the point where most of us are paralyzed and we don't even realize how much fear we're holding in our bodies. And that comes through a lot of ways, back pain, knee pain, exhaustion, anxiety, insomnia, jaw clenching, tight shoulders, all of the things. We all have our thing.
Right.
So
yeah,
that's the biggest one, that I tons of fear, and to the point where a lot of us don't even know how much we're holding yet, and we're just frozen.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. I did an interview with a clinical psychologist last week on Monday, and she alluded to the same thing when she was talking about anxiety, and she sort of differentiated and distinguished between two buckets, where she said there's green zone anxiety, which is that's a normal, healthy level of anxiety that we all have. It's a motivator, it's sort of evolutionarily programmed into us. Then there's red zone. And the red zone she described as obviously unhealthy, but it's more like when we start to tip into a traumatic experience or response. And she was suggesting that that's really, on a collective level, that's what's happening for a lot of people right now. And I like that distinction. I think you're pointing to that.
Yeah, well, we have this like a healthy animal spirit that recognizes anxiety, and just a general way, day to day, should I walk down the street, kind of the things that keep us safe day to day. And then we have the fight or flight.
Right.
Probably similar to the red and the green, that when there's real danger, and there is danger and there's a lot of fear, but it's also generating so much survival fears right now, that it just brings up that really deep fear of actual survival. And, have I done my work here? Am I ready to cash it in? I'm not.
Right. Yeah. So like people really having thoughts about their own mortality.
I like that. I love that theory that all fear is really the fear of death. And something that is always really available to us, and not always the best idea to really dwell on. But it's nice to remember sometimes that when the feeling of fear is so pervasive and your whole body is responding to it, that it's usually at the root of it is the fear of death, but just above that is the fears of the first traumas that we experienced when we felt really helpless, and when we were probably young and too young to think for ourselves. And so we have that ability now as adults to reprogram that.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah. That makes sense. I think like I've had one instant of that during this whole time, and it was like I got a throw up bug, and it was terrible. And so this was almost a week ago now. Yeah. And it was like, it came on at like 2 a.m. and like, you don't obviously it's like you're not well resourced at 2 a.m. And I could just see my mind going down and down until it got to that point where it's like, I'm going to die, and it was kind of that core fear. And I was like, that's it, and for me, like in a moment like that, it was clearly tapping into the larger spectrum of like anxiety and fear that's going on right now. For me, in a moment like that, I think I told you I do a lot of self-talk, and I was just like, I love you, buddy, man. You're going to be fine. And it helps me to talk out loud to myself. It actually calms me down. And like when something like that happens, it's just like I just love on myself, because as kind of funny as it sounds, it's remarkable what an impact it makes, like what your own dialogue is, you know, your internal dialogue. And if you can make, you can actually, if it's negative, like in a moment like that, and you see your mind spiraling, and then you put something out to the universe and yourself that's diametrically opposed, it's
Mm.
amazing. The impact, at least for me, I've noticed over time, it's amazing. Like I was good, you know, I was just like, I had hands around me and it was me, but
Mm.
I felt cared for.
Yeah. Well, there's an older you that can, you know, hold on to the younger you
Yes,
and reassure
absolutely.
the ending can be different this time.
Totally. So, all right. So you're hearing that and you're seeing that. So tell me like a little bit, how are you responding when you talk to people about that? And I know maybe you could just give people a little context, because you know, you're mostly hands-on and you can't be right now.
Yeah.
So I know you're not seeing clients every day like you usually do.
Yeah. I think, you know, I think everything about the way that I work comes from the way that I grew up, and not feeling heard and not feeling supported a lot. And when I started going through acupuncture school, it blew my mind at the depth and the capabilities of the medicine, because it's a lot of times in the West, we know kind of shoulder pain and fertility, but it's a very comprehensive medicine.
Mm,
And it's an energy medicine on top of the physical. And
right.
so with everything that we do, we're always looking at, you know, what are the energy states that we're working with here? And usually we start in crisis when things are really bad and tensions are high and
Mm,
everything's up here. And then, you know, we start to work through those layers and build trust and get more and more results. And then once we can get that outer layer of that frenetic white knuckling energy, then we start to get deeper into who I am as a practitioner, who you are as a receiver, and we're actually exchanging more authentic energy together.
mm, mm,
And then the treatment's better. And then you
yeah.
start developing this beautiful thing we call Shen, which is just a radiance that
Mm,
from you that you radiate into the world, and you're just more in alignment. And I realized several years ago that my gift is a hand holder. And
nice.
I love all of the deep and difficult things that a lot of people are living with, where, you know, people feel really broken or really helpless, or they've been to 15 doctors and they've gotten kind of the same repetition of responses. And there's always a moment when I'm doing an interview and I'm listening here, and then I'm listening on all the other levels. And when these pieces start to come through, and I can recognize a part of that person that hasn't been recognized just in conversation, it's
Mm,
melt in the moment. And it's like they
yeah.
just want to be seen.
Mm,
And so, you know, I realized that for me, I don't really take tennis elbow anymore. I have kind of a specific grouping of things that I work with, and it's a really good clientele for me. And it keeps this beautiful energy moving in my office and in all the work that I do, because
mm,
I'm at my highest level and they're receiving at a higher level than they've received before. And we start to create something together that is so much bigger than just the two of us.
mm. And so are you finding, so how are you sharing that right now? Is it through the breath work? Is that the main medium right now?
Yeah. So typically in I do what I call lifestyle medicine, because I work primarily with autoimmune conditions and IBS and emotions and trauma. Like that's my wheelhouse. And then there's a few
Yeah.
on the fringe. And so I always do a comprehensive approach, which is acupuncture, and I have a botanical pharmacy. I make custom formulas, and breath work is optional, but a lot of people end up doing it,
Yeah.
with talking and lifestyle and nutrition. And
Hmm.
so people come in, it's the whole AJ experience. And then after they start to calm down a little bit, they're like, tell me more about this breath work. And then they show up for that. And so, you know, it's been I'm actually creating an online course right now that is going to encompass all of those things except acupuncture, but also with breathwork, meditation, and yoga. That will be
Nice.
a transformative lifestyle program, especially for people with those things
Yeah.
where you have a lot of chronic fatigue, so you're not leaving the house as much. So right now, the part of this crisis that's pushed me forward already is I'm online doing virtual breath work.
Mm.
It's been coming down the pike, and it just pushed me to do it now.
That's
And
awesome.
yeah, it's been great. There's a few people on this call that have practiced with me, and it's cool because they, some of them have come in person.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, I can't believe it's just as strong.
Yeah.
So
Well,
it's
that's
been
awesome.
go ahead.
Well, yeah, let's go into it, because I do think for everyone who's listening, and I would really like you to ask questions here at the end. This is it's such a like compelling healing modality, and I'm someone who I meditated for before I encountered this kind of transformative breath work. I've been meditating for over 20 years. I did intense Iyengar yoga for over a decade, did pranayama. But this was like a completely different modality. And if everyone came away from this webinar today with a sense of the potential of it, I feel like we will have done our job to give people an exposure to it and then potentially follow up with you. Because I think, especially during a time like this, we're all at home. This is something people can do at home. Everyone, it seems like, is a little bit freaking out, because we all are. This is something that cuts right through all of it. And I'd like to just get into that a little bit and talk about it. It's like, why is it so powerful? So to begin with, like, maybe you could just talk a little bit about what is it? Like, what is this transformative breath work? And maybe just share a little bit of your own journey with it. How did you find it, and how did you end up teaching it?
Okay. When I was in acupuncture school, I was in Seattle, and I started getting really into yoga then. I was working full time, and I was like, I have to do something to like hold
Yeah,
it through a master's
totally.
program. And I ended up at the most beautiful studio with the most incredible teachers, and really got into pranayama at that time. And I studied as much as I could. It's a really hard thing. You can't really study that much on your own. You need a great teacher. And I did quite a bit, and loved the emotional transformative nature of it. And then I, finished my degree and got my practice started. And I knew that I loved community work. I had been teaching meditation in my last practice and had these great groups going. And I was at a point in Boston where I was really ready to have groups again. And I
Yeah.
had a break. I needed to sort of reformulate how I wanted to serve. And I was like, I just really miss the opportunity to have a deep conversation in a group, that people can feel a resonance between themselves and other people that are living with the same difficult things they're living with, and realize that they're not the only one. And I remember, I was grappling. I knew something was coming up, and I didn't know what it was. And I remember feeling kind of alone and really struggling. And this thing came up on Instagram, and it was another acupuncturist, and there was something, it was like this picture, and I read what she wrote, and it was like everything just went
Interesting.
into alignment. And I was
Yeah.
like, that.
Yeah.
And she was a transformative breathwork practitioner, an acupuncturist, a fashionista. I was like, I'm feeling so many things right now. Because my whole experience with everything I'm doing is that I needed to provide answers that didn't come the way that we have always gotten them, because those weren't working. And I was tired of being told no. And I was tired of being shut down when I could feel beyond the shadow of a doubt that the things that I was feeling were real, and that authentic expression is important. and that we shouldn't have to fit everything into this really tight structured box in order to be accepted and heard.
Right.
And that's really the foundation of everything I do. Is I love using those kind of words. It's like, use it in your words, because then more of you starts to come out. And that's what was happening, was like another big layer of how I could do that. And so I studied with a man named David Elliott. Actually, this is such a good story. I was watching Bravo, of all things, which, you know, can be just like superficial and vapid, and it's really nice sometimes after a long day of intense meditation.
Yeah.
I want a break, and I had heard this breathwork woman on a podcast, and she said something about my teacher wrote a book called Healing, and I was like, and then she didn't say his name, and I was like, I can't look up Healing on Amazon. I'm going to get 200 books or 2,000.
Yeah.
I emailed her and I said, you know, what was the name of that book? And she emailed me back. And so I'm watching Bravo, and I was watching Flipping Out. And I opened her email and I heard the TV. He said, well, I took my staff to visit a spiritual healer that I work with. And I clicked on the link, and he said, name David Elliott. And I was reading davidelliott.com.
Wow.
At the exact moment, it was like he read it as my eyes went across the website, and I was like, what is happening?
Yeah. Wow.
So
Cool.
I did a 6-day training with him, and I've done a few more since then. And it's given me this amazing vehicle to work with the breath and to help people work through layers and years of trauma and difficulty and stuck energy and all the things that we've been in therapy for 20 years can change in 1 or 2 breath works. And I know that it is such an important addition to everything, because it's everything I've been talking about and cultivating in my practice. I now have an even bigger avenue for more people to create energy in a group around these topics.
Right. So can you share with everyone, like imagine we're there in your studio now, and we're all kind of sitting around in a circle. What happens? Like, give us a sense of like what happens in a breathwork session, and then I kind of want to share some of my experience, obviously, because I did it with you.
I know. So the interesting thing, so we have everyone just lie down on the floor, and I have blankets in my office, or people can use yoga mats at home, or I sometimes just lie right on the rug. It can be really simple, and that's what I love about it. And it's a simple 3-part breath. Everything is through the mouth, because when you breathe through the nose, your brain can stay involved. And when your mind is involved, the ego likes to take a hold of things and stay in control. And that is not how we develop.
Right.
So we do all the breathing through the mouth, and I have people cover up their eyes either with a scarf or an eye pillow, so you can shut down those senses as well. And we just lie flat on the floor, and you do a big inhale to the belly, a big inhale to the chest, and an exhale. And then you just keep with that pattern. And so simple that I think in the beginning you do get lost and you forget what you're doing, and you just come back to that simple breath. We play music, usually about 25 minutes of what I would say are really good songs, but I make the set list, so I'm biased.
Yes.
And, you know, kind of yoga songs, and I like things that I feel in my chest. Like that's that kind of music that just gets you right here. And as you're breathing and the music's going, it starts to move energy through your body. In yoga, we call it the nadis, and in Chinese medicine, the channels and the meridians. But it's where all of the energy from your organ systems and your emotions should be flowing through your body. And when we have pain or depression or anxiety or any pathologies, it's usually because energy is stuck. And so with this breath pattern, you're starting to move that energy, and you might feel it in your body. And when you keep with it, it just keeps everything flowing. And I find that usually the first song feels like work. The second song is like okay, I can do this. And the third song, you don't even feel your body anymore. And
Mm,
very trance-like. And what I love to say is you get cosmic downloads.
mm,
And part of that is letting go of the ego being in charge of everything. And part of that is this oxygenation and the breath. And it's creating all of this energy that starts to break through these layers of armor that we have and have had for a long time.
right, right.
So new things can emerge. And we have this connection to something higher. And it's common to have clarity around things you've dealt with for 20 years, or for ancestors to come to you and say something, or something you've been struggling with just suddenly isn't a struggle anymore, and it lasts.
Mm, yeah, that's very resonant with my experience.
Yeah. And it's magical. I mean, for me, like, I grew up around a lot of chemical dependence, and I worked in restaurants and drank alcohol and smoked pot and did all this stuff for years. And I realized at one point that I don't like feeling out of control, and I don't like feeling altered by chemicals at all. And actually, after I did my first breathwork training, it just hit me one day. I'm done drinking alcohol, and I don't use any drugs or any altering substances anymore, because the altered state that comes from breathwork is this unbelievable clarity and full body resonance that I just feel so much more clear and in my life, and in
Mm,
my life in a non-controlling way.
mm-hmm.
That, I mean, for me, like, this is the alterations that I like, and that I think are a lot more wholesome, and a lot, um, you can work with them in such a different way.
Yeah. One thing that, like, so as you're talking now, I mean, there are a lot of different things, but one thing that, like, you were talking about, um, well, I'll just stick to my experience. One thing is, like, I felt like it was like, when I've done the breath work, it's like a vertical intervention, right? It's like kind of, and I've experienced this with plant medicine before, but it's like lightning strikes. It
Mhm.
goes, it, we're so in our day to day, kind of whatever our day to day is, we're in a particular momentum of our own reality that's just going, and the good, the bad, all of it together, but it's my life. And, like, I've got my habits, I've got my routines, and I've got, like, how I do things, what I eat, and blah blah blah. And I just felt like with the breath work, it's such a discontinuous experience. You do it, and suddenly everything washes away, everything falls away in a way that it's hard to imagine other parts of your life. There are very few things that can provide you with that sort of, like, the ocean or the sea just parting, and
Yeah.
you're actually in a completely different space. It just opens, right? And I feel like breath work, particularly this, I haven't done a lot of other forms of breath work except pranayama, and pranayama didn't do this, but it does it. And I think part of that, at least for me, was related to, and this is something you said early on in the training, is just like the breath just bypasses the mind, like, right away. And you're doing a certain work. It's just, and also, it's not like with meditation you're renouncing your mind, or you're creating a space around your mind where you're beginning to identify with awareness, and you disidentify with thoughts. It's very different. It's like breath work is almost like the manual version of that, where it just breaks your relationship to the mind, and something else takes over, like you referred to it almost like a trance.
Yeah.
um but I've felt that, and to me, like, that seems like, especially when it's so heart opening, like this particular healing modality is, it's so healthy to have those, like you call it, maybe like a fundamental pattern break. It just breaks the pattern, whatever pattern you're in right now. It's just it's going to break, and your heart is going to like, that's what comes through your heart. Just boom, the doors open. Anyways, that was just one thing I was thinking about while you were talking.
It's just that.
Yeah.
I know. I mean, it has a way of just cutting through all of the layers, and we all know that we have layers of things that could be better. You know, we all eat the whole bag of potato chips sometimes.
Right.
Especially
Right. Yeah.
we all have things that we know we could change, but then we also have layers and layers of things that we don't realize are keeping us from developing. And that's the habits that you were talking about. Habits, and then there's genetics, and there's learned behaviors from our families, and there's karmic things, and there's ancestral patterns, and there's so many layers that we're carrying. And you know, if we're lucky, we can wake up to that and we can consciously face some of it and turn things around. And you don't have to all the time. I mean, breathwork can just break through this stronghold that we're living with that we don't even realize we're doing.
Mm. Yeah, go ahead.
That's it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, to your point about just there's these layers, I think like, so my first time when I did it with you, I had a deep healing experience with my body. So I remember finishing the breathing and then slowly like, you know, you encourage everyone just to return to normal breathing. And then it was like, as I was emerging from that, and it was definitely felt like emerging from a kind of another state of being or consciousness, just tears were like just flowing. And suddenly it was very clear. I was just, it was a mix of grief and joy. And it was I was there and I was apologizing to my body for mistreating it. Like through my life, there are all these different ways where I had just taken it dramatically for granted. And then I was just thanking it at the same time, just like saying, oh my God, you've been with me the whole time. Thank you. I love you. You know, it was both of those things together, but there was this sort of unifying healing event that happened. That was, you know, it was just emergent. I didn't have control over it. It was just came right to the surface, and it was very moving and very poignant.
Yeah, I love that combination of like the grief and the joy, because
Yeah.
what that is relief and freedom.
Yeah.
At the same time. And there's a thing with traumatic experiences that, you know, we take on habits of protection after that. And it's common to overcompensate and lock in trauma. And that's the thing that starts to make everything else feel heavier than it should. You know, it's like, gosh, why is this so hard? You know, and why can't I just get into a relationship? Or, you know, why is the grocery store parking lot so overwhelming? you know, when these things just become so heavy, as we've internalized trauma to such a degree that we've locked it in.
Right.
That really came from just trying to protect yourself. But as you, we call that the heart protector in Chinese medicine, and as you realize that you're in a place that you can trust, which is part of what happens with breath work, especially in my groups. I love really making people know that they're safe in their body and in the room and with the people in the room. And as you realize that you can trust that, and you can trust your body, and you can trust the room that you're in, you can let go of that stronghold a little bit. And so initially some of that old pain is released, and there's an afterburn. I mean, there's the stuff that we've been holding on to. It hurts on the way out, but not as much as holding on to it.
Right.
And then we can drop that weight, and behind that is so much lightness and joy and freedom and clarity and a vision of so much more that's possible for you in this life now. And then we just take the next step towards it, and you keep going and you get
Mm,
there fast.
mm. Yeah. And I love how you're kind of bringing in this kind of trauma being stored in the body. Obviously that's just become, that idea now is a lot more mainstream. When you have like, what's his name, Bessel van der Kolk,
Yeah,
I mean, yeah, the body knows the score. I can't remember, something like, but it's so, and that's been my own experience with sort of therapy in the past, is that you can touch into these places in your body, and then you can say a word or you evoke an image, and then the dam breaks. And that often takes time and a skilled therapist to guide you there. But I feel like with the breath work, what you're talking about is, it's another pathway in that goes, the intelligence of the body. You access the intelligence of the body, not the intelligence of your head. And that,
right.
that seems to be a huge part of it.
Yeah, because it's intellectualizing things can only take us so far. And with the breath work, it's a physical action of like
Mm,
that energy. And it's, I mean, it's just like right now, one of the things I've been suggesting to people is like, please go for a walk, a brisk, fast walk. Because the more that we sit around and have all these emotions, it creates stagnation. And we call it
mm,
a qi in Chinese medicine. And all stagnation equals pain. And so there's a piece, there's a lot of therapy that's very good, and there's a lot that's needed, and there's a lot of support that we need. And having a practice like this, which is geared towards emotions and geared towards freedom, and gives you a physical thing to do to move that energy, it kicks out the beaver dam
mm.
for good.
Yeah, I love that.
Me too.
Well, and then, so like two other experiences that I've had, just to share, because again, it's just these, it's such a powerful kind of medium for healing, is I think another time when I was just doing it at home alone, again, I went through, like, I had created my own playlist at this point, and I'd gone through it a couple times, and at the end, again, or it was like maybe like 3/4 of the way through, there was just this vision, and it was, it took me back to my childhood, almost through like gradations, but through like primary attachment figures in my life, down to like one of my earliest, in my sister. And there was just such an incredible connection to that healthy attachment that I had with my sister when I was really small. But it helped me understand something very deep about my family dynamics, and why she was such a strong attachment figure for me.
Mhm.
And it was utterly non-conceptual. It was just like zoom, boom, 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 through like a line through these people down to her. And I was like, I don't even get this, but it's so powerful. And like, oh yeah, no, I didn't get it with my, yeah,
Down, even if your mind can't explain it yet.
and yeah, it was heart, it was deep heart knowledge.
And that's the spiritual self-confidence coming in. It is that, our struggle all the time is to define things and to get our hands around it and to break it into parts and try to figure it out and control it. And, I mean, this is so much of our life is like that. And what happens in those moments is that's one of the cosmic downloads, is what I call it, is it's a full body yes.
Mm,
And every cell in your body relaxes a little bit, because you realize that you have these connections and you've always had them. And it starts to create a confidence in you that you're completely capable of all the things that you see for yourself and more, even if your mind doesn't understand how yet. It's like your
right.
heart is so connected to what your pathway forward is, and it's effortless in so many ways.
Mm, totally. That's great. All right. So then the last one, and then I think we'll move into Q&A, is I think, and this is more almost like a general generic reflection on breath work, but there have been a few times, and I mentioned this at the beginning, where at the end, I would get up and I would just be in this state of deep, sort of fundamental equanimity. There was not a ripple, and there was sort of, just complete stillness, presence, and that sense of being kind of deeply in the pocket of myself. And just the beauty of this, though, is that it would carry forth into the day. And that's like with any contemplative practice, that's often the case. But there's a physical nature to the breath work where it's like you're feeling this in every cell, and you're carrying that and radiating that into the day. That was like, wow, I was like, this is very, very magical work.
It is. And it translates to other people so beautifully, like without saying. I mean, the day that I got the email from my friend and the TV and the website moment happened was because of the magic of this medicine and the of it, that's why I had the awakening when I saw her information, because it just was such a cosmic download right into my soul that I was like, oh, and that's what acupuncture did for me too. The first time I learned about it, I was like, that's my career. And, it's like when we learn to pay attention to those hits and we act on them wholly and, with all of ourself and with all of our passion and reckless abandon in all of the best ways, it's like we shed layers of dead weight that were keeping us from being that like bright, beautiful light in the world that, just radiates love and consciousness and capability in a way that affects people positively. And it doesn't have to take from you. It can just be part of what you do for people.
Yes, totally. So, it's just who you are.
Yeah.
So everyone, I wonder, do you have any questions? Would anyone like to share a question or a reflection? Have you experienced breath work with AJ or anyone else? Do you want to share your experience, or do you have questions about this? And let's see, here we go. Someone asked, are we leading you through the practical application of the breath work? So we're not. Well, do you want to speak to that, AJ?
Sure. Tonight we're not, because so we play music and usually it takes 3 to 4 songs to get into it. What I'm doing through the month of April is, and it will continue, but I have April scheduled out for now, is I have virtual sessions on Wednesdays and Sundays at 8 Eastern. And I think you gave people the link to that, Morgan, right?
I did in our Facebook group, but I'm going to link it up in the Finding Equanimity Amid Uncertainty landing page.
Cool. And then for everyone who's here tonight, I also just have a code for $10 off if you'd like to join. And so that'll be tomorrow night at 8 and Sunday and every Wednesday and Sunday through the month of April.
Yeah.
It's a little hard to do in this kind of context because it takes a little bit to get the momentum going, and I want you to get the whole enchilada.
Yeah, you need time and you need a setup to do it. And tonight, my goal inviting AJ on here was to just give everyone a sense of what this is. But I would.
The why is cool,
Yeah. Natalia Traeger, I saw you had a question. Let me just click on you. All right. Hi, Natalia.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I wasn't sure.
Hi.
I was just wondering if it's safe to practice for someone who is clinically depressed and takes a medication.
Highly recommended for that.
And it's safe, there'll be no side effects.
Only good ones.
Okay, sounds good, thank
To be
you.
honest, Natalia, there are emotions. I mean, a lot of times you do feel emotion, and it's good to let it out and let it move, you know, because at the root of depression usually is stuff that we haven't been able to move through. And so, you know, it's something that ideally you work through some emotions every time you practice, and you get lighter and lighter, and things keep changing.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Natalia. Thank you for your question. Anybody else have any questions?
How do they ask questions?
They raise their hands over and then I just click on it. Now, one thing to say here, everyone, like there's another dimension to this, which we haven't totally touched on, but connecting to breath just as a fundamental of life itself for me has been such a big part of doing the breath work. Like, so when there have been just random moments of life when I've started to get anxious, I have just started breathing very consciously, and I've developed a confidence in my breath after doing this breath work. Even though I won't go necessarily into the modality that Amy Jo is teaching us, I just have a different level of confidence as in the breath as just a fundamental basis for the goodness of life. And that is something that comes out of this, is just like no one can take that away from you. Breath is everything. Breath is so fundamentally life positive. And you know, I think we all know this, science shows that when fight or flight kicks in, if you do some steady deep breathing, immediately flips the chemistry and reverses the impact of all the constriction and the whole limbic brain kicking in, reverses it. And that's just your breath. That's just consciously breathing deeply. So it's a simple thing, but it's incredibly powerful. And that's like a tool that's available to each one of us in every moment. And it's, I think it's the easiest thing to take for granted.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember my pranayama teacher used to always say that, you know, because the lungs are around the heart, that when we control the breath, we can control the heart rate. And he would say that breathing, well, okay, I'm trying to think. But you could slow down, like if you're anxious, you can actually slow down your breathing rate, and it will help to slow down the heart rate and slow down anxiety. And same goes for like if you have a tendency to a lower heart rate, you can increase the breath, and that's where like walking fast and things like that. But that's cool for anxiety too, is how much the breath can change what's happening in your heart.
Totally.
Physically and emotionally.
Oh yeah. So anyone, all right, we have another hand up. Natalia, hello again.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi, thank you so much. I used to work in a hospital, so I'm very procedural in almost everything. Is there a better time of day to practice this? And also, for how long should these practices be?
I think that you can practice any time of day, but usually you feel really good and a little bit floaty afterwards. So it's nice to practice when you don't have to leave the house immediately after, or if you just have time to be kind of like after a good meditation. And how long? So in my breathwork classes, the whole session is about an hour and a half, but that allows for some talking. So we breathe actively for about 25 minutes, and then we do about 12 to 15 minutes of rest. And then it takes kind of a few minutes to just like get back in your body after that. So
So close to 30 minutes, 35 minutes.
Yeah. You give
Some
yourself an hour just to do the whole thing and recover and be ready to function again.
Okay.
And
Thank you.
And AJ, just keeping on with Natalia's question, is it like I would sometimes do it? I think when I started doing it at home, I would tend to give myself 40, like you said, 45 minutes to an hour. But you could, for example, like do a shorter session, right? You could do 15 or 20 minutes and then of like the intense breathing and then wind down, or do you recommend people really go with the full 25, 30 minutes?
Well, I think once you learn it and you practice it with guidance,
Yeah.
that, you know, you can decide what works for you. Like maybe on the weekends you have more time to dedicate, but if you like to do a little bit in the morning before you go to work, what I usually will do is listen to 3 or 4 songs.
Yeah.
And just give myself a timeline in that way.
And another part of this that's helpful, thank you. And I mean, another part of it is that you will lose track of time, and it goes by really fast. Like I'm always astounded. Like 30 minutes just went by. You know, I'll get to the end of the 30 minutes of song, and I'll be like, I can't believe that. I don't know if that's your experience, but it is mine.
Yeah, and sometimes, and it's crazy because sometimes you have just you're like calm afterwards and kind of clear, and then sometimes I will, I guess pass out is probably the best way to say it. Like I'm not fully asleep, but I'm not awake
Right.
at times. And when I have a stronger breath work, sometimes that happens. So it's nice to give yourself room. So you don't feel like you have to rush off to anything else.
All right. So, Natanya, does that answer your question?
It does. Yeah,
Natalia.
so that's it's Natalia. Yeah,
Natalia,
you
sorry,
did it. You did it right. You did okay. I was just thinking, so maybe it's not something to do morning before work then, but rather maybe after work, especially if you have a lot of strong emotions to release.
Yeah, it's nice to give yourself space around this kind of work at first. I think once you get going, you know, typically what I find is in the beginning, you're working with all these layers of things that have been going on, and as you start to work through those layers, it becomes less intense, you know, and where you learn what to feel and what's going to happen. So you're a little more trustworthy with yourself after that.
Could you maybe speak a little bit more about how we can actually get to that class? Where are you actually teaching it? You mentioned it's tomorrow. So is there a link that maybe can be emailed to participants of the webinar, or how do we find you?
I think Morgan's going to follow up with the link.
Yeah.
Okay.
Natalia,
and it'll be a Zoom call like this as well.
yeah. And Natalia, I will put the link on the landing page where you registered for this event. So over at aboutmeditation.com, there's that Finding Equanimity Amid Uncertainty page, which has the speakers and then the archives. Okay. And do you remember that page?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll find it.
Yeah, I'm going to put it up on there. And good. Well, I think we're getting up to the wrap up zone. Before we close, I wanted to let everyone know that we have one more webinar this week with Julie Hunt. She is a meditation teacher, and tomorrow she's going to be leading us through a guided meditation. She teaches primordial sound meditation, and yeah, she's a great teacher. So I encourage you to join us for that. AJ, did you want to wrap up with any kind of closing thoughts for people? And also just where can people find you online?
Yeah, well, first I just want to say thanks for all of you that came tonight. And it's awesome to be together like this and just be able to share. I am on Instagram, I am Flourish Eternal. And online, I'm flourishboston.com. And I do offer virtual breathwork right now, Wednesdays and Sundays at 8 p.m. Eastern. And you can also sign up to my email list, and I'll be happy to keep you involved in all the future offerings that I have, which are going to be more.
Excellent. Amy Jo, thank you so much. It was a
Having
total pleasure to have you on here. And everyone, thank you for joining us. And yeah, it's a delight. It's really amazing to be connected with everyone in this medium. I'm very grateful to all of you. And AJ, thank you so much.
Bye, guys.
Bye, everybody.